as I adjust my lighting.
There you go.
Um, okay. So,
Number
welcome
nine.
everybody.
Number
Wait,
nine.
what?
Number
9.
nine.
Okay, welcome everybody to episode 9 of the Tycho Decay short film. This is where we do production reviews and go into detail and just kind of get updates on our daily process. And we want to confirm that this week is going to be about adding detail, and Alec is going to be telling us all about why detail matters. Uh, for those of you who may not know this, Tycho Decay is going to be a horror short film. It's from the minds of Alec Miller and Alan Payne.
Planes.
Planes, thank you. I was like, that's not correct.
Yep. Planes if you're Spanish.
I'm not Spanish.
Well, he's
And
not, but he
so
grew up there more or less. So
in Spain,
yeah.
or okay, interesting. But yeah, so this week we had been previously talking about this one scene, the monument scene that we'd going into, and you had effectively been trying to get everything correct. Previously, we were talking about how to hang ropes, and you made a tutorial out of that, if I
Right.
recall.
Yep.
And that was basically how to just hang objects from them because you had to put those in the room. And then we needed to go over, and this week was just adding more bones and things around the area.
Yep.
Correct?
Yep.
All right, so show me what you got.
All right, I'm gonna share my screen here. Alrighty. So I don't know if I do. I have last week's render. I don't on hand, unfortunately. Um, but so last
So
week,
unprofessional.
yeah, I know it was more or less the same. Well, I can get it if I go to.
I don't. You can.
No, we're doing it. We're in it to win it, man.
All
Uh,
right. I like that attitude.
Royals and
Better than the one where you
Rogues
apologize for everything.
projects. Yeah, I'm done apologizing for anything anymore. So this is how where it was more or less looking last week, which is our thumbnail render here. Um, so it's kind of sparse. We had some like heads on spikes and stuff, and like a little skull here, but sort of the secret with 3D design and like realism is adding more and more imperfections and more
Like
stuff.
detail.
Yeah, so you're trying to find this balance between adding enough details that the thing starts being believable. Because if you just like look around your room right now, there's all sorts of stuff everywhere. It's very rarely just like a super clean, uncluttered environment. Like there's some architectural renders you can get away with that with, but when it comes to making something feel like um, realistic, oftentimes what you're doing is adding imperfections. And there's actually a joke from a motion graphics artist I know, and he was talking about how he was doing watch ads, and if he was when he used to shoot the watch ads like physically and have like the watch on a pedestal and like rotate it, like they would do everything they could to like remove any imperfection. It was like buff that out, like get rid of that piece of dust, like oh that little thing there. And then now when he's doing a render, and I'll bring up one over here, what he's doing is like adding in imperfections and like dust and all these other things. So like I've been remaking our demo reel, so you get a little preview of this, I guess. But when it comes to these renders, um, you know, what we would do is remove all the details, and then let's see, like now when it comes to something like this, like I'm adding in little dust particles, you want some fingerprints, you want all the like little imperfections in the thing to make it feel more believable, versus, having to be really austere and clean. Yeah, we'll watch this afterwards, but it's a fun demo reel update.
All right.
So so that's what we were at last week, and then now this week we're looking more like this. So you can see and this is partway through the scene or things. So there's going to be even more. Like I need to do probably 1 or 2 more passes on this. One of the things you'll notice is like I broke up the fog a lot more, so it's not just one solid fog layer, like it was in that previous example, right? So here you can see the fog is just like solid. It's just like a brick, and it has some fall off where it needs to, but now it has some noise to it, a pattern. It's a little more varied. So that's like some detail, and then like I said, all the extra bones. And then if I open up, did it crash on me? You son of a gun. Oh no, it didn't crash, it's right here. It's already open. Um,
You should apologize.
yeah. If I
You
open
don't want
up
to offend. You don't want to offend
offend the, yeah, no, I'm worried
the
now that I
board
tried
game
to
gods.
start it again. It's gonna be like, what the flip do you think you're doing? Um, but if I do this, let's see if it works. If my computer goes like, what are you trying to do? You're trying to stream, record, and render at the same time?
I don't see a problem with it. That's entirely acceptable.
But if we go here, you'll see that I've added like twice as many as that last render. I just haven't done another render yet. Um, so this is going to be our little IPR render here. If it goes, for some reason it hates me. Initializing. You should be done initializing and you should be rendering.
What's IPR?
It's the same one we've talked about before, the difference.
Progressive render.
Progressive.
What's the I stand for?
Interactive, I think, progressive rendering or something like that.
Okay.
I'm probably wrong about that. I have no I forget what the IPR stands for. I'd have to look it up.
I'm looking it up right
Do
now.
it. I don't want to be giving out false information. We'll get flagged. Well, while I let that try to think its way through, what we can do is see something fun here.
Interactive progressive rendering.
Oh,
Yep.
look at that. I'm not a dum-dum. So anyway,
Time to
so
do shots.
this is going to work, I hope. There it is. Progressive rendering. Okay. 3, 2. There. It's just mad at me because I'm trying to do this while doing everything else. So you can see we have even more. And now it's starting to look, if I do say so myself, like kind of smexy, right? Like it's kind of looking like somebody might have lived here. Somebody might have done something here. There might be something awful here. And then I found something this week that I'm really excited about because, you know, we talked about last week how this was originally more of like a Dead Space marker, right? It was a very much so like a straightforward monument, just like two pieces of stone curled up, and they were going to glow and then whatever. And then I made it more abstract and tribal and stuff like that. But then I was having this problem where I was like, it doesn't tie into the other scenes as well as I would like it to. And I realized what I needed to do to make it work is that green ooze that we have in the lab scene.
Yeah.
I have a better lab render now that I think about it. I'm gonna pause this and screenshot that so I have that to look at. In our lab scene here, well, I do have a better render. So the goo in the jars, these ones are clear, but they're going to be more of like a glowy goo in between this and like a solid yellow. But I need to tie that to it. So we're going to have some of that goop, some of that yellowy goop that's in those other in this shot here. You can kind of see it.
You're gonna put that into the scene with the
we're gonna get some of that in, like either spread around or it might. I'm trying to figure out if it's gonna be like drooling it or something cool like that. But that will tie it more closely together. Like that'll tie it together better. And it's like, oh, okay, this is starting to make sense. And then I might include like a detail. Maybe in the papers here, we'll have one of these also be an image of like a photo that they've taken of the marker scene. So just to make it more cohesive, right? Storytelling wise, the whole point is to like leave these little breadcrumbs for the audience to follow. And I don't like it when something's so abstract that there's no chance of the audience like really piecing together, like, what's the meaning behind this? Why is this here? And you should have a reason for it, but that reason can't be so obvious that it's just like, oh, okay, cool. You just spell it out for them. That's boring. But you don't want it so abstract. So I'm trying to get that balance of like, okay, all these need to tie together. It needs to be kind of not clear, but if you just stopped and thought about it for a little while, you should be able to be like, oh, okay, that thing is what's causing all the problems that then leads to the escalation that then leads to the conflict, right? So it's like,
I know we talked about it before. You had a term for it. What was we were talking about the Hitman not 3, but it was like a trailer for it and how like a film roll turned into a gun and so forth. I don't remember what the phrase or the terminology was that you used.
I don't know when it comes to that specifically. the concept behind that is like sort of like match cuts, but this isn't really a match cut situation. But it's just like it's
Yeah, no, no,
like
no. It used it like it was like trying to engage the audience intellectually, like trying to make them like think,
right.
or was surprising them. So you were trying to surprise them with, oh, you think it's this, and it
Yeah.
turns into that type of
Yeah, you
thing.
want to give them
This
the
is
aha, like that aha moment.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
that's
This is a
more rewarding than just being told something. Like it's far
yeah,
more when it comes to storytelling, like I could tell you very specifically, like here's just a good example, right? Like in like a horror film or something, right? You can have a character and they can like walk up a set of stairs um and you know get killed, and we could just show you, here's the person, they get stabbed by the bad guy, and you're like, oh, okay, that happened. But a filmmaking way of doing that, in my opinion anyway, would be you see them walk up the stairs, their eyes get big, and then you see the flashlight fall, and then the light breaks, and that's another sign of like, okay, well, clearly something's bad has happened. This isn't good. Now, I'm not 100% sure if they're dead, as I would be if I just saw a knife get plunged into them or whatever, but it's a much more subtle, it's a lot better way of doing it, right? And you see it like roll to the side or something, and then you see the shadow of the thing. That's all a better way of doing something than just straight up going like, here's Jaws, he looks like a giant shark, and then here's the full animatronic, and like, here's the alien or
yeah.
whatever,
The downside of that though is that technique has been used so many times to fake out in
Right.
stories that now if you don't see it, you can kind of sit there and be like, oh, this person's probably not dead. They're probably
Yeah.
going to show up at the end. They're injured and they shoot and they're the hero. It's like so you can kind of see that
Yeah.
and how that can also be a downside of it as well.
Yeah, yeah.
I
So
get what you mean.
yeah, so you have to like there's like meta versions of this, right? Where it's like the
Yeah.
audience might be aware of one trope, and so you can use that trope. But
Which also count that's another pet peeve. That's going on the wall of pet peeves
oh
that we will
boy,
one day do a video of our film pet peeves because I cannot stand that.
we'll have to do which one? What's the pet peeve?
The pet peeve is the fake out death
Uh-huh.
is that I can't handle. I can't stand that. It ruins every movie that I see that uses it. The light behind a fan, a spinning fan.
Right, right.
That's the other one for me. And
That's where
then
I
you were
place all
taught.
my lights. Are you kidding me? Oh,
I know.
if I have a light, if you have a house, obviously the light fixture goes above the fan blades. That's how every fan's designed in your
Stop
home,
it.
right?
Stop it. I cannot. I
There's
can't do it.
nobody owns a fan where the lights are below the fan
Hey,
blades.
well, I think it's pretty offensive that you think that you should not have your face lit when you have a helmet on. Like when you're riding a bike, you want the people to know when they're about to hit you with their car what your face looks like,
Yeah,
so
I
they
know.
can
Whenever
remember.
I've been worn a helmet for whatever reason, when I go to scuba diving, I definitely have lights inside of the goggles pointing at
Yeah,
my eyes and my
yeah.
face.
The fish need to see you. It's not just about you seeing the fish. That's just selfish,
Yeah,
narcissistic.
I should bring this up for because we actually have like people watching. Surprisingly, I'm gonna bring this up so people can see, but uh, there's so many examples of this. But we could say
Oh,
what
we're gonna shit. Yeah,
helmet uh, light
yeah.
movie.
We need to do like a little like top 5 hated film
It's
pet
just I
peeves.
don't know
This will be
why
it.
this has become a thing, and I haven't seen people talk about it. But I'm sure there's a Reddit page somewhere. But like
Well,
this is what we're talking about. How in every movie there's a character with the helmet, and for some reason, all the lights are like facing inwards
wait. Go back to the other. Go
to
back
their
to the other
face.
image. Look on the far right, and it says "Add lights to a cosplay helmet." So they're now telling you how to do
Yeah,
it.
here you want to look like an actor who's added lights to their face. It's just so funny to me that like this has become a thing. I'm like, what astronauts like? Yes, I want a bunch of in my peripheral vision. I want there to be glaring lights all around me. And what's cool about this one is they've done multiple different colors, right? So they have the warm color for her like jaw light, right? And then the eyes and hairs are a blue. So they got that teal blue going on, an orange blue contrast.
What is this?
It doesn't make any
Pacific
sense.
Rim.
It looks like Pacific Rim. It looks like the new Pacific Rim. I don't think.
I Uprising. I just watched it the other day.
Did they?
Woof, woof.
Okay, it doesn't look like the. I was like, if they did it for Lightyear,
An
that's
animated.
embarrassing because you don't even have to, right? Like you could
Yeah,
just
that's bad.
have it be normal.
Wait. Oh, maybe no. Never
I
mind.
can't tell. I haven't watched it.
I can't. I'm looking at the other ones in the corner. I can't see.
Yeah, there's so many. modern helmet designs in movies, and it's just like, let's just shine a light inside there. So that will not be the case with Tycho Decay. There will be no lights inside of helmets. The helmet does shine out because it's like a visor. It's like a Dead Spacey sort of thing.
So more about detail.
So here's what's cool about this. So one of the things I wanted to do is I wanted to, as this thing kind of starts to trigger, I wanted some spookiness to go on, right? So, because it's no fun having like all these physics objects, all these bones are physics objects, the ropes are physics objects. He has the cloth around him. So as we cut back and forth, we also need something to happen. There's like, it's boring if it's just a static scene. So as we cut back and forth, this thing gets more and more spooky and agitated, and what starts to happen is all the bones start to like lift off the ground, right? And as they lift, eventually it's going to get a point where the head like turns and does like a classic like yell at the camera, and then all the bones and things like move. So it's a fun little effect here. You can probably see, I'm sure it's delayed for you, but
no, it's coming through actually.
Yeah, so that goes off and then they all explode. So that's a fun little effect that I spent the week trying to get working right, and now I'm happy because it's all playing nicely. Whenever you do something like this, there's a good chance it's gonna like blow up in your face. Something wrong will happen, and I need to record when that happens. You know, you've all seen the Pixar like hair animation glitches and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So let me turn off the visibility on the effectors here, so we don't have to see all the lines. There we go. So now if I scroll through, you can see the bones lift up, and then
that's interesting. Now, at one point we had talked about possibly having the bones form the totem itself, like a plain totem, and having them all form up. Why did you go with this instead?
Partly because there's no subject when you first cut to it, and then I might still do that, frankly. It's like, yeah. So this is like step one is like, can I do this part? And this is a sort of a fun, spooky. I know you don't like spooky thing. And then
you already said smexy, and I don't know what that means either.
It's a sexy. It's a smexy. It's like
What's
sexy.
What's the M for then? Is it not two words put together with like smelly and sexy? I don't understand.
No, it's just a thing. I
hate the internet.
Say stuff.
All right. So anyway.
So yeah, so that's kind of working. Looks like the jaw over there on this guy's breaking because it's just not happy about me scrubbing through it. But yeah, so.
Okay, so you still might add that in.
I might still add it in. We'll see. It might be. We'll see if it's too much.
Okay. What do you mean by too much?
It doesn't let me going backwards is the problem. Okay. Oh, it's because that thing is not cached. There's two different caches. I need to cache the jaw. Okay. Anyway.
So what do you mean by too much?
Too much. So like I said, you're trying to find the balance in like detail, and you're trying to find the balance in like visual complexity, right? So there's times where you can have what I would call the Batman Beyond problem, where there's like a whole bunch of motion and a whole bunch of like there's a cape and there's something you can't really tell what actually is happening. And this was caused by the Bourne movies, right, being like really popular with their shaky cam. So like you can do that with anything. Like you can add in so much. It's a complaint a lot of people have about modern games and movies, where you've added so much because we're no longer like limited as much. Not no longer, but not as limited by like, hey, you know, if you make that explosion that complex and that big, you're gonna break your computer. No one can render that. Now, like I just had that bone simulation, which is like well over 1,000 or a few hundred bones, all interacting, you know, somewhat realistically, just like boom, just like that. It's like it's kind of amazing how well it works. And that can now be done on like a local machine or like my Mummy Sim that I did. You have this new problem, which is like the whole problem of, and we can go off on a tangent if you want on this or not, but it's the whole problem we have as a modern society. So like one of my problems I've been running into while trying to work on this is like, we've never had a point where you have too much content and too much food and too much like, so I'm having to be like, well, how do I limit myself on like what I see every day? And like, I need to start curating, because before your life would be curated just by like your locale. And so it's like the idea of seeing, way too much art, and so you're overstimulated and you have too many ideas. That was like not a thing. Like just getting the opportunity to
Yeah.
see an art museum and to see stuff was like kind of rare. And now it's like I go on Instagram and I'm seeing like amazing piece after amazing piece after amazing piece, and it's like, oh, I should use that. I should use that. That could be interesting. It's like that's way too much.
You
So
talked
it's
about
the
this
same
with
thing.
Adam.
Yes, yeah, with Adam Spizak.
Okay, because I was like, this sounds familiar, which
Right.
is why we should release that, because that was a good. I
Well,
like
we'll,
that
we'll put it
because I
up.
agree with you.
So that's a new problem to have, but it's the same problem with like technology. Before, just getting a render together was like so hard, and getting it to look good. But now it's like, well, I can add in 100 trees. So then what you risk is overcomplicating the scene. So like that previous render, not enough. It's not enough detail. It's obvious that this is a 3D render because it's like, well, there'd be more stuff here. But now that we can add in like all this foliage and all these things, it's like, okay, how do you make it not just look cluttered? And that's where like art direction comes in. So the same thing with motion. So when you have my background's in motion design. So when you have something happening, motion wise, that instantly grabs your attention. Whatever moving is moving, like our eyes go to. And if you have a still room and something moves in that room, you're just like, you know. So there's a problem though if you have everything moving all the time. So I have the hanging skulls and they have the jaws, like that's kind of nice. That's a subtle movement. And then we have the bones slowly wrist lifting, like that's kind of cool. But then we also have like this main thing. It's like, so that's a lot to try to pay attention to and read. So I'm gonna try it and we'll see if that ends up having too much
Isn't the way
motion.
to help what's the word? Keep it even keeled, or to even that out from an
Mhm.
art direction standpoint, is to say, okay, well, it needs to add up to something. So like for example, you would take the bones and what they don't just form on the totem, but they form on the totem in the shape of something. So like you
Right.
have the way that it's set up now, and then the bones kind of come together and they form wings, or they form claws on the hand of it, and then when it explodes out, they
Right.
all dissipate. But it kind of gives shape to something. That's kind of what you have to go. That's how I think it would be. You can even that out. Is yes, you can have all that movement, but it has to build on each other to something.
That's not a it's
Otherwise,
not a bad idea. It's my
yeah.
right now the plan is, I think right now what my current kind of plan is to have them build up the, like I said, eventually the head kind of does a movement, and then I think I'm gonna start having some that goop leak like out of either the eyes or the mouth or something, like it, that builds up, and then you have this like cool, it'll be a really cool image, I think, to have this like crazy kind of terrifying you know um skull structure with like a
Yeah.
glowy goopy eyes and illuminating some of this stuff. So that's my current plan. I like, but you see when you give me a good idea, like maybe it could form
Why the Pavion's Bigfoots?
something more. That's not a bad idea. I still need to figure out, I don't know, I still need to figure out the base. I like what I have going on here, but the bottom part's a little skimpy, and so I'm trying to figure out what the bottom, so like maybe it's a mix of all those things. We have one part of it forming like the bottom part, and then the
Almost like a
jaw and the
mound
head.
is forming around
Yeah,
it that
the mound could
gets
kind of give
progressively
it a
up
bit of a girth and then
yeah.
pile up the rest of it. It's not a bad idea. Um,
You could almost, instead of having it all completely rise, you could have it all just moving on the ground that moves up
yeah.
into it.
And so then now the Rob I have in my head, the opposite. I have your voice in my head now going like, yeah, but do we want to do that, or we want to be like move on to the next scene and have this
That
like,
is a good
is
question.
this
That's
enough?
honestly,
Is it enough? Is that a good enough idea? This is a constant struggle, by the way, audience, of working on anything. Is as you work on it, you have a cool idea, and it's like, is that idea good enough that I should add to the production at this point in time? And
yeah.
like, it all depends on how you make things. If you're a smart production with budgets that are like planned out, the answer would be like, well, we made that decision in pre-production, and it's the whole like fix it in post kind of, right? It's like fix it in pre. Like, let's
Yeah.
make that decision in pre-production. Let's stick to our pre-production, unless it's such a good idea that you're like,
Yeah.
golly, we have to do that, right? It's a happy accident.
Yeah, and that's also where it's like I may not like his movies as much, but I do appreciate Quentin Tarantino's ability to have the whole movie in his head, so he knows
Right.
every shot that he wants it to look like. So he's not getting shots from different angles or different distances, and
Right.
oh, maybe we'll do an over-the-shoulder shot on this. It's like no, he's like no, this is the exact shot that I need, and we're gonna move on.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I view. I think it. You have to be a good artist. Like if you're gonna be a good artist like as a director or a producer, like you have to be able to have that ability to at least, if not do that right away, to have the discipline to then go, okay, I'm going to break this down into the smallest minute detail, and then yes, you can still have that flexibility when you're going through it, but at least you know you've broken it down, so you're like, okay,
Right.
this is how I imagine it to look like when we're going into it.
Well, and we've talked
um
about this before, which is like, is it serving the why, right? Like the
yeah,
nice, the good, not the nice part, the smart part about doing films, the like I would say the traditional and you know, um, I'm trying to think of a word that's not like loaded, but anyways, but doing it like the correct way, right? Like would be to the classical way, I might say, is would be to like, yeah, you need to have that in your head. So that way, you know, well, why am I doing this? Well, I'm doing this because this, and that. And then, you know, if something happens on stage, like a good example was that like the ooze for me, I was like, oh, hey, that needs to connect. That's a why
yeah,
problem, right?
yeah,
Um, so it's like if this serves the why, then that makes sense. But the other
yeah,
thing is like, you know, we talked about this too, but we can still, I don't think people get super tired of it, but just like, you know, there's two ways of making anything, right? And there's one where you plan out the whole thing and you have the, you know, and the other one's to taste, right? Which is like you go to your kitchen and you're like, okay, I have these ingredients. What can I mix? What can I make? Um, and both are
the
ways
which
of
in my
doing it.
which in my head is the your voice saying the rule of cool. You're like,
Right. Yeah. 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 Right.
okay, yeah,
So
there's some argument for that.
yeah, there's some art for the real cool, but also it's just like when you go into your kitchen, like sometimes you don't want to be restrained. We talked about the Office and how that was like impossible to make back in the day just because of like the way film worked and getting
Yeah,
cheap cameras where you could just set up 8 of them and let them run and do take after take after take because you know and let people improv. Like that's very much so that style, right? It's like, well, we don't really know what we're gonna get. We know what we kind of want. We know what the goal is, and it needs to be funny. As long as it's funny, it's in, right? And that's sort of like the rule of cool for me is like as long as it's cool, ultimately that's what people care about, right? When it comes to different, depends on the story, depends on what you're doing. But if you're doing a comedy, ultimately it's like, is it funny or is it not funny, right? That's
yeah,
ultimately what has to be your guiding star. And so if you make something and it's funny, it's like it stays. And if it's not funny, it's like I don't care if we love it. I don't care if it was in the script. It's not funny. It doesn't make any sense. Let's
yeah,
just leave it. So
yeah,
you know, when it comes to some of our goals with this is to like let's show off our capabilities. Let's show off the fact that like part of the goal, frankly, what I've been coming to realize the longer I work on this is perhaps maybe the actual like goal of this thing is to prove to myself I can
yeah,
do this. I that sounds obvious in a certain sense, but the more I've been thinking about like so I actually had fun, believe it or not, working on this like marker scene this last week and then as it started to come together I was like, oh, I got excited. I was like, this is actually looking good. Like, this is actually,
yeah,
oh, I'm not a fraud. I don't hate my life. I'm not a complete, like, you know, sham, you know, when it comes to me telling people how to make things look cool or whatever, make art or make, you know. Um, and I'm like, oh, okay. So that's a reason to work on this too, is just because, like, I'm trying to prove I can make something that I like, not just corporate like content that I'm like, I hate this, but it makes me money. So, and even then, it's
that
like, does it
yeah,
make me money?
yeah.
As you just
Not
got to hear
yeah,
before the call. Yeah.
yeah, not in the short term, but
Yeah.
that's just something that can come with it though. Is that like I totally get that. It's the idea of the discipline that you're doing, that you're
Yeah.
putting in you're putting in the work, and you're getting that you can get something out of it.
Right.
It's one of those things, just celebrating though the small victories of like, hey, okay, this is making progress, this is good. But that's always like, yeah, if you can set small goals and start that out, that's always the hardest part. it it's almost impossible to do it alone too. Like I don't think you can really accomplish something with that. Like you have to have people being like holding you accountable, or like,
Yeah.
hey, encouraging you, or like, oh yeah, you can do that. Without that, I think it just makes it really difficult for people because you don't know. That's really what it is. You don't have to, if you're not getting feedback on it, you're like, well, I actually don't know if it's good or not. Like I
Right.
can have people telling me it's good, but I don't know if they're just trying to encourage me, but they have no idea how to do it. Or on the flip side, that they're just like, yeah, go get it.
Yeah.
Or worse, you have people who are like, why are you wasting your time doing this? Like, you're not getting anything out of it. Like, why are you spending your weekends? Why are you spending your Friday nights talking about this and doing this when you could be out, going to the bars and meeting girls? And you're like,
Yeah.
yeah, that's a legitimate point, but I'm doing it for X, Y, and Z reasons. And if you can't understand that, then yeah, that's not helpful.
Yeah.
There's always kind of that pull for you. But
Yeah, it's hard, dude, and like the there's no guarantees in life, and that's like one of the hardest things about doing anything. Um, is like I don't know, I'm just running on faith and the fact that I've always wanted to do it, and so
yeah,
um, that I don't. There's so many things where I think you said something. I said this in the most recent Blau interview that's not live yet, but
yeah,
I'll say it here as well in case it's not the same audience. And if it is, you get it twice, which is cool. So you won't forget it. But I said, everyone has collaborators, right? Like no matter what you're working on, everyone has collaborators. It just happens to be for a lot of us, all of our collaborators are dead, right? So, what I mean by that is, I'm collaborating with whoever invented the microphone and whoever, designed, whoever started Sony and made this camera and the Al Gore who invented the internet, I think he's still alive technically. So that's like a boomer joke. I don't think anyone under the age of like probably 25 is getting that joke.
yeah. No,
Um,
that's definitely not happening.
yeah, but I'm glad you laughed at it. Means your parents are politically involved enough that you heard that joke. So anyway, so there's all these people I'm technically collaborating with. They're just not around, physically at the moment, and I think that helps get over some of the part of its ego, part of its just not wanting to like bother other people with your thing.
Yeah,
It's like a
yeah.
false humility of like, well, my thing is not that important. They have their own life. They should be doing that.
I don't know if it's false humility though. I think it's a question of you don't want to impose
Yeah.
on other people, especially when you don't necessarily have uh evidence.
Yeah. For me, it's
Like
like I
it's
don't like. I've been burnt on so many student film projects and so many small film projects where over and over again people were like making all these promises and you get caught up in that and you don't I never wanted to be that person. That's like why I'm
yeah,
trying to pay everybody. That's why I'm trying to like do this slowly and not like rush everyone into like, hey, I need that tomorrow, come on, give it to me, like it, because you know I've worked on those projects and it's like I almost killed myself working on this one project. Not like literally, I just said like a banned YouTube word. Anyway, I didn't sleep for multiple days. So like I was literally in danger of falling asleep at the wheel, like driving to the project and driving home and to dailies to show the director. And I told them I was like I can't keep doing this. Like I literally haven't slept for 3 days straight. I'm my body is forcing me to sleep, and they're like, I don't care if you sleep. I need it done. Was what they said to me.
yeah,
And it's like, this isn't worth it. This isn't worth that. This is a stupid short comedy film about a dude who makes funny voices. Like what? And you're gonna like risk my life for that? Like, and obviously you don't have to be that extreme, but you know there's been enough of those stories, and I'm sure you have stories of working on set and people yelling at each other and freaking out, and you're like, this is a student film that's like no money's involved, nobody's famous, nobody's making it or breaking it off of this film. Why are you all acting this way? And it's because like
yeah.
you've told everyone like what does matter and it will be a big deal, and if this is how we're going to break it, and it's like I don't.
Yeah. Well, it's that. So what I mean by evidence too is because it's definitely that. It's the you go and you go above and beyond, and you don't want to imposition other people and be like, oh, this is gonna be the biggest thing ever, and blah
Right.
blah blah. But then, what I mean by evidence too is like for us, it's like we don't have evidence of like we were talking about the YouTube channel. It's like why
Right.
doesn't it grow faster? It's like well because everything that we have isn't evidence yet. well, the
Right.
finished project is evidence, and that is when people go, oh, so these guys say they'll do something and they can do it. Now
Right.
it's taking long, but that, and you just kind of go with that. It's taking a long time, but
It's
that's
gonna.
other circumstances. But that is still different, and the difference between the two is like, yeah, you can say it was I was listening to a podcast. I think it was Chris Williamson's. I can't
We'll
remember,
see.
but he had brought up the idea that like he knew somebody who was like he never I don't know if he had been in the military or something, but
Hmm.
he had never been. I don't think he'd ever been in the military. This other guy, third party, and was basically like every time something happened, like I I thought I was brave, but I always heard this person in this other room like telling you like you have not been put to the test. I think
Right.
that's a similar idea of like, yeah, I can sit there and say, oh, I have good ideas. I can sit there and yeah, I write scripts and I do all this stuff on my side. And for so long, it's been just yeah, it's a hobby. I just do it for
Right.
myself. This is like okay, well, no, it's a little bit more than that, and that you're not sure like what will it get like when it gets put to the test. Am I going to fold or am I going to continue doing it?
Yeah, that's a really good analogy, I guess, for it. Like I had a friend that joined that became a paramedic, a first responder because of that. He was like, I have a part of my life that I'm missing. I don't know. I've never seen like real like tragedy and hardship and stuff like that first person. So he ended up becoming a first responder for a while to get that experience. I don't necessarily think you have to do that, but I do agree with that. Like I have a friend and we were talking and he said like we were watching those videos where like it's like a social experiment and it's like in a room full of people, if you start letting smoke into the room and everyone else acts normal, the one person who's the experiment, everyone else is paid actors, like the one experimental person will also act normal. They like won't make a big deal if no one else is. And then the same thing if you have like if you draw two lines and one of them's obviously they're both exactly the same length and then everyone agrees one is shorter, the person who's like the experiment person is more likely to be like, yeah, it's shorter because it's like you just want to go wrong with the crowd. And he's like, well, not
Yeah.
us though. Like we're smarter than that. I'm like, dude, I don't know. I've never been in those like that. No one's ever done that test on me. No one's ever done that experiment. I haven't. My cat is going nuts. I don't know if you can hear him.
Not too much.
Okay, it's dude. Shut up. Calm down. Anyway, so on that note,
Yeah,
we should
yeah.
probably wrap up. But yeah, you know, you don't know. You don't know until you're put to
Yeah.
the test. So that's what we're doing here. Is we're trying to let's test it out. Let's see. And you know, and like you said, telling other people like I know this is going to be a success and this is going to be great and you all have to come on board and work for free and long nights
Yeah,
because
yeah,
I have
all
this
like it.
vision and you're all gonna. What's weird is that it works. That's the weirdest thing to me. The weirdest thing to
Well,
me is I feel like I could do that. Like I feel like I could go to a bunch of people and tell them we're making this awesome thing. It's gonna be so cool and
so okay,
your portfolio
yeah,
is gonna
okay. Now
blow up and
there
then like
is I agree with that, but there is a difference too with what we were just discussing and that, which
right.
is twofold. I think people want to find something they can believe in,
Yeah, you
like a
got to. You
project.
got to.
Well,
Otherwise, everything sucks.
yeah, but like even that, like even if it's just like work, like oh
Right.
yeah, well, because I mean we know a lot of guys who do creative work,
Right.
artists, and most of the time they're doing corporate jobs. Like
Hmm.
that's like I have a corporate job. It's not a fulfilling thing. Like, yes, I can find fulfillment in the stuff that I'm doing, but it's not something where I'm creating something.
Right.
It's like it's just kind of like if you're fighting, there's a difference between fighting entropy and creating something.
Right.
One is the act of creation is a lot more powerful than just trying to fight off entropy, even though both of them are really important.
Right.
And the difference is why I think that it would be possible for you to go and do that isn't because people would be like, "Oh, well, it's just a vision." Yeah, okay. Well, yeah, I'm really excited. It's also though that we actually have evidence of what we've done. That's kind of
Hmm.
what these talks are. Is no, no, no. Here's our evidence. We've been meeting. Here's what we've been getting done. Here's what we've been seeing. And that's actually a lot more powerful of like we like and the difference too is that not over promising. That's
Right.
always the key thing. You can't over promise. You can't sit there and be like, yeah, it's going to do great. It's like, we have no idea, but we're just at kind of like what we just admitted to. It's like, we just want to get it done and
Right.
see what comes of it. Like, kind of proving to ourselves, and hopefully people enjoy that and find entertainment out of it. But yeah, this is just as much for us as it is for them.
Right. Yeah. Getting that social proof, but also proving, you know, to that voice that's like you haven't been tested, right? You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
you don't have the discipline to do it. You don't have the
Right.
effort to do it. Yeah. But anyways,
All right, man. It's
that's a
been
good way to
a good
good way
call,
to
a good
yeah.
meeting. My cat is losing his mind, and we'll catch up probably next week, and hopefully that'll be the
Uh,
last. Oh, you're gonna be
so
on. Oh,
I'm
it's Thanksgiving, isn't it? It's gonna be that whole weekend.
yeah, I didn't realize it until yesterday when someone
Yeah.
asked me what I was doing. I'm still fine with meeting. I'm not taking Friday off, so
Okay.
I'm gonna have to be working anyways. So if you want to meet, I'm happy to do it.
I'll run it by my wife because she might be mad. But if I
That's true.
take that time
If
and
we
work,
do, we could probably do it over, and I could take the lead a little bit. We could do it over the title, how we came to, the
yeah,
decision coming to it,
let's
how
talk
we
about the
found it.
title and make it a relaxed one if we do meet.
Yeah, sounds good. All
All
right,
right.
we will catch up, and thanks everybody for watching. I hope you have a good week.
Peace as my rip my microphone out of everything. See you guys. Adios.